Archer Aviation. We've got the Olympics, we've got their rollout, and then we have so much more. I'm so excited to share this video with you today, more than ever. So make sure you strap yourself in, get a pen and paper ready, and let's get right on into it. So after a few weeks, I thought it'd be good to actually start doing a bit of due diligence again and actually diving in and looking at Archer's rollout. It's led me down an alley that I can't believe I haven't focused on that much before. And then the more I read into it, it just all makes sense now. So make sure you smash that subscribe button because I'm pulling out all stops to try and interview Adam. And the bigger this community is, the easier it will be to convince Archer Aviation. But anyway, what you're here for today is actually mesmerising that we haven't brought it up enough in eVTOL Weekly. You can say it's a rumour, you can say it was pie in the sky, but I'm going to let you in on my thoughts on it. We're going to look at the Olympics, we're going to look at Archer Aviation's commercial rollout, and then we're going to see how realistic all this is. So without further ado, let's jump on right on over to it. So before we go any further, you're going to tell me this is back in 2023, but you're going to see how this is going to build the foundation of the video. And then we've got another article that we're going to heavily discuss. So I found this article back where Archer expects hundreds or thousands of eVTOLs flying over LA Olympics in 2028. Now, my initial thoughts are, look, we're expecting 10 to 15 midnight this year out of the Georgia manufacturing facility. That is nowhere near the 650 that Archer hoped to come in the future. However, the further we go into it, we can see where this figure comes from and how it does make sense. It's not just the Olympics we're talking about various other events. But let's forget about that for now, and we'll just focus on the Olympics first of all. So jumping on down, back then, Adam Goldstein said that they were targeting hundreds or thousands of eVTOL aircraft flying over the skies of Los Angeles Olympics in 2028. Now, before we dive into any of the actual facts, please let me know early on, do you think it'd be possible to have hundreds, if not thousands, in Los Angeles flying by 2028? And have a think about it. I'm not on about will they have hundreds or thousands of aircraft. I'm saying, will they be in Los Angeles? Because you got to think about it. They've promised Abu Dhabi. They're promising Ethiopia. They have their hybrid VTOLs being made. So the figures just don't match up at the moment. But let me just explain a little bit further. So they're expecting a high cadence of operations, a couple of test flights a day to thousands of test flights per month. Which, look guys, they are achieving everything they've said they were to achieve back in 23. So initially the facility, which we now have built, will produce 650 aircraft, ramping up to 2,300 later. Now, 2,300 is a massive figure, and I couldn't see it doing this until they completely upscale the manufacturing facility to hold this amount of production happening in one go. And I do expect that to be around 2030, 2032. So that'll be nowhere near in time for the Olympics. But 650, what are we expecting in 3 years' time? If we can get commercialization over the line this year, Archer will more or less release a huge amount of capital to get their operations up and running as fast as they can. We're thinking this 10 to 15 aircraft are only being built this year, and we're expecting a slow scale after that. However, I'm telling you, if we get certification, that's when the switch should be flicked. Because what's the point of them at the moment producing hundreds and hundreds of midnight for them to fail certification and then have to adapt the aircraft that are already built? So I can see why they're starting slowly. And do I think that it'll be 650 per year by then? Maybe not. But even if it was 300, you're slowly building it up. Yes, we won't be in the thousands, but they're not wrong. They said the hundreds. So back then, Archer and Stellantis were targeting 2028 when Los Angeles hosts the Summer Olympic Games as a realistic target for getting hundreds of thousands of advanced air mobility vehicles into the sky and launching a mass-scale use of these air taxis. Now, I do agree with this. Potentially, they could have thousands in the sky, but I don't think the thousands will be over Los Angeles. However, I do think they will reserve a nice amount of vehicles for Los Angeles at this amount of time. You're going to think about the infrastructure, but we are going to talk about the infrastructure, and it's a lot easier than you think for Archer in this. So both chief executives think that it's realistic that the technology, public acceptance, and new air traffic control infrastructure, which must integrate the aircraft into the national aerospace system, will be ready for prime time by then. Now, if you think back then, they weren't really projecting the likes of Palantir. Now we have that nice collaboration with Palantir. The likes of the air traffic, the manufacturing can scale up at an extreme rate. So I just think it's more realistic than ever that they can target a 2028 rollout to the masses. So I'm going to jump straight across to the next article, and this is where it gets really interesting, and this is where your thinking head has to be screwed on. So jumping straight on down to this, there's 3 events that are going to promise to bring in millions of spectators from around the world. It's not just the Olympics. It's the 2026 World Cup. It's the 2027 Super Bowl, which the LA Rams will host there. And then it's the 2028 Olympics. Now, do I think they're doing this so they build out the scale of Los Angeles? No, I don't honestly believe so. I think this is a big PR stunt to basically show the world what they're about. Some of you guys are going to hate me, but when we talk about the Super Bowl, you guys say it's massive in the US, which, hand on heart, I believe. However, the likes of the World Cup brings in significantly more eyes from all over the world. And this is why I think Archer will try their best to get maybe 3-4 midnight aircraft into Los Angeles, maybe running 1 or 2 routes, just to show the next generation of American innovation. Yes, 3 or 4 won't make that much difference. However, you're now getting eyes on the world. Then by 2027, I could imagine 30, 40, 50 midnight eVTOLs flying here and there, and it'd be the high-end celebrities. Now, in regards to this, at the SoFi Stadium, Stan Kroenke, who is the owner of LA Rams, has allowed them to build a vertiport at SoFi Stadium. I know Stan Kroenke all that well because he is actually the owner of our favourite soccer team, Arsenal. But Stan Kroenke has allowed them to build the vertiport at SoFi Stadium. Now, this will not be built for the 2026 World Cup. However, we're going to look at the solutions around this because I still believe they're going to be there as long as they're certified. And then the 2028 Olympics, that'll be the first time it's out to the masses. And they more or less show people what they're about. I think this will be the first time you'll get everyday civilians actually travelling on these on the mass scale. There'll be all different routes highlighted. And if anything, all these tourists will want to fly on the likes of these air taxis because they'll never have seen them before. So then, most of the city's planned transportation infrastructure initiatives for the Olympics won't be completed until after 2028. And it kind of doesn't make sense in one way, because you plan for these big events and you think you'd have the infrastructure in place. These are not talking about eVTOL infrastructure. They're talking about roads, buses, taxis, and they just won't have it all complete in time for the Olympics. But this is where Archer have literally found an opportunity and a gap in the market, and they're literally going to fly over the top, pardon the pun. So, Archer, as we've said, is building a new vertiport at SoFi Stadium, which will host the World Cup, Super Bowl, and some of the Olympic Games. In partnerships with Kroenke Sports and Entertainment, the LA Rams football team, the vertiport won't be operational by 2026. but Archer does hope to complete it in time for the Olympics. And I think the Olympics is going to be that milestone they'll be trying to hit. This will more or less certainly get them in front of many millions of people that have never even heard of this type of technology. So Archer signed a memorandum of understanding for Kilroy Oyster Point, a 50-acre waterfront campus in South San Francisco, as a critical hub in the company's planned San Francisco Bay Area urban air mobility network. And guys, if it's a video you want us to try and dive into a bit more on where these vertiports are and how far they're coming along, please let me know. And if you like the format of both me and Reese having the conversation back and over, let me know if you want it like a video like that too. We'll try our best to do everything we can for you. So now we're going to talk about how they're actually going to operate there if they don't have these vertiports in operation by then. So LA has got the most unused aviation infrastructure in the entire country. So it's got airports all over the city. It's got a number of helipads on rooftops, and they're just not used. So all Archer actually have to do is set up the charging network and then just have the ability to get customers in and out of the aircraft. It sounds easy in theory, but in comparison to trying to more or less fight with the FAA to get certification, I believe negotiating with helipads and unused airports to use these and put the charging infrastructure in place is more than realistic at occurring, especially when you have someone like Adam at the wheel. So this is the map. Look, I am not up on the map of LA, but any of you guys that are from Los Angeles, this is the type of network we're talking about. So Archer's team chose the locations based on data on how people move around Los Angeles today. So this is where their partnership with Southwest Airlines came into it. So they're actually given access to the airline customer data that is used to identify good locations for these vertiports. So look, they're not only using the likes of these partnerships to gain customers, they're actually using it as a stepping stone to actually create data. Once you put this data into the likes of the software Palantir have, this is where we can scale it out right across the country. So then the first year would probably look like a handful of aircraft operating 1 to 2 routes. And we said it earlier on, I don't mind that. It's more just a good PR. If they can achieve this and get in front of the world, imagine the likes of the jets flying over with the Olympic colours. Imagine them coming down on the likes of midnight as advertisement. It shows the world that America have now entered the era of urban air mobility. And guys, do you think I am completely mad though, thinking they can be there for 2026? They will go in the tens, if not close to 100 by 2027 for that Super Bowl. But then I do think it's realistic that we could have 400 or 500 midnights if we scale up correctly and get certified very early on by the 2028 Olympics. Please let me know. And then follow eVTOL Weekly to make sure you're up to date on all things Archer Aviation.